Welcome back, accounting boffins. Remember, we are busy with stock systems. Now keep this in mind that we have two stock systems, namely, let's go through them again and identify the key components. When we're dealing with the periodic system, remember, you're dealing with the purchases account, and when you're dealing with the perpetual inventory system, you are dealing with a trading stock account. Right? So that will give you a clear indication of what the two systems entail. Right, let's move on with the question, and it says here, Besi Center sells fabric and dressmaking products. The business uses the periodic inventory system, so they are using the periodic inventory system to record the stock. The financial year end is the 31st of October 2020. Okay, now, transaction number 1. Transport cost on trading goods paid by EFT amounted to 92,200, right? Number 2, damaged goods returned to creditors for 45,300. Let's take the first transaction because the question says, analyze the transactions 1 and 2 in terms of the accounting equation, complete the table provided, show an increase with a plus sign and a decrease with a minus sign for assets, equities, and liabilities. All right, so here we go. This is the table that we have to complete. The table says transport costs on trading goods paid by EFT 92,200, and obviously the second one, let's take them independently. Number 1, transport cost on trading goods paid by EFT 92,200. Watch, account debited is carriage on purchases, account credited is bank. We're assuming that bank is favorable. Are we? No. Let's look. Yes, here's a classic question. Here's a classic question. And I think we put it there for a particular purpose. So watch this. Account debited is carriage on purchases. Clearly you can see here that your equity is going to decrease by 92,200, right? This, in fact, is not the case because, and the reason we put them both there is to show you that if bank was favorable, right? If your bank was favorable, then it would mean that your asset would decrease by 92,200. So I'm showing you both. However, when your bank is unfavorable, right? Now watch what happens here. This is when your bank is unfavorable. Now, your bank account is no longer regarded as an asset, but it's now regarded as a liability. So watch this closely, guys. And it was done specifically with this in mind to show you that if your bank is favorable, then bank is regarded as an asset, and if bank is unfavorable, then bank is regarded as a liability. Okay, so keep that in mind. Right, the next one says, damaged goods were returned to the creditors for 45,300. Account debited is your creditors control. Here we go. You're debiting your creditors control. Why? It's your liability account decreasing in value, therefore debited. And you credit your creditors' allowances. Remember, this is the account we specifically set up to record all the goods that we are returning to our suppliers. So you debit your creditors' control, credit your creditors' allowances. Now watch this here. Watch. Your equity increases by 45,300, and you must be asking why. Let's do the liability first. Creditors' control, obviously we know, will decrease because we are returning goods, clearly. So you're owing your creditor less money. But why is my owner's equity increasing? Now this is the reasoning behind it and the understanding of it. When you are returning goods, creditors' allowances will eventually be subtracted from your purchases. So now, because it's going to decrease your purchases, it's going to increase your owner's equity. And that's the reason for the plus 45,300 in the owner's equity account. So keep this in mind. Creditors' allowances will eventually be transferred to your purchases, and it will reduce your purchase. And therefore, we know purchases as an expense. And when you reduce your purchases, you are actually increasing your owner's equity. I hope you understand that. All right. Now the question says, calculate the cost of sales for the financial year ended 31st of October. And here we start off by saying, my stock on hand was 98,350. So the first thing that I do is, in my calculation, watch. I start off with my opening stock of 134,600. What I'm also doing for you, I'm showing you the same calculation as a calculation, and I'm showing it to you as a formatted question, depending on what is asked in the exams. Because if it says calculate, you can do it in any way you want to do it, because the question didn't specify to say use the answer book to show the calculation of cost of sales. It just said calculate the cost of sales, right? Okay, so we've got our opening stock and we've taken it into account. Now we have cash and credit purchases of trading stock 622,400. So therefore, watch, we add the 622,400, and if we are doing the calculation, we say purchases 622,400. Right. So what I've done is, like I've explained to you early on, I'm showing you a straightforward, just where you just show figures, but you could be asked to show it in a table format. Then obviously you need to specify the detail. Right. If we take the next item, which was, so we've dealt with that one, transport costs paid by EFT 92,200. In my calculation, I'm going to add my 92,200. In my table, I'm going to bring in the freight, because that's the cost that I incurred in bringing the merchandise from the point of purchase to the point of sale at my business, in other words, where I'm going to be selling the goods. Next one that we have here is the damaged goods returned to creditors, 45,300. Watch, in my calculation, it's a minus. Why? Because those goods were sent back to my suppliers. They were damaged goods, so it had to be returned to my creditors. In my table calculation, there's my return shown in brackets to indicate that I have returned those goods to my suppliers. Right? Going back. And the next item is goods donated to a local school that were fundraising, 5,500. Watch here, minus the 5,500. Whereas in my table, again, donations specified in brackets. Can you see? It's in a bracket, indicating that I am subtracting. Right. The next item that I have here is goods taken by the owner for personal use, 3,750. Just a word of caution here. Don't just be careful how it reads. If it just says drawings, drawings could be cash or stock. But be careful. In this case here, we're only dealing with stock as a drawings figure. So that's the amount that we require. It says here, goods taken by the owner for personal use, 3,750. Therefore, minus 3,750. Watch in my table, drawings, 3,750. Okay, now another question arises here, that if you were asked to calculate the net purchases figure, right? Look, I'm changing the question slightly because I want to explain the concept to you. If you were asked to do or calculate the net purchases figure, how would we do that? Watch what we'll do. We'll take our purchases figure of 622,400, right? Plus the freight of 92,200, right? Minus my return of 45,300 minus my donation of 5,500 minus my drawings of 3,750, and this will then give me a figure of 660,050. Now, watch. This 660,050, 660,050, this figure here is actually a combination of all of these here. Can you see that? Watch here. The 660,050 is your net purchases figure. And what makes up net purchases? It will be your purchases, add your freight, minus your return, minus your donations, minus your drawings. So the combination of all of that should give you a figure of 660,050, right? Let's just check if we did the correct calculation. It was 622,400, we got that, plus the 92,200, we got that. Then we've got the, let's carry on there, there we go, minus the 45,300, which was my return, minus the 5,500, which was my donations, and then minus the 3,750, which was my drawings. Then eventually it gave us our answer of 660,050. Okay, there we go. Let's continue with the question. Then the next part of the question said, we've done the cost of goods returned by debtors taken into stock. Okay, now watch this here. The cost of goods returned by debtors, obviously this is, that particular item there is your debtors allowances. Now remember, debtors allowances is not going to impact on my cost of sales. It's going to impact on my sales figure. So therefore, be careful. Don't just assume that everything will go into the calculation. So this is actually my debtors allowances, right? So cost of goods returned by debtors taken into stock will be 7250. That will be my debtors allowances figure that I will subtract from my sales figure. Okay, but for cost of sales, I also know that I was given other information. Let's identify it. Stock on hand on the 31st of October amounted to 98,350. So therefore, I bring in the minus 98,350. And in terms of my table, there we go, closing stock 98,350. What do I now do? I take all my components to determine my cost of sales. Let's do that. Okay, so here we go. It's a 134,600 plus 622,400 plus 92,200 minus 45,300 minus 5,500 minus 3,750 minus 98,350, and that will give you 696,300, which is the cost of sales that we were expected to calculate, 696,300. Okay, now that is your cost of sales component. Now watch this calculation, guys. Important. Opening stock, purchases, or net purchases, depending on whatever the question is asking you to calculate. I've shown you both the calculations, and I've also shown you the permutation in terms of the calculation here. Watch. If you are asked to do this calculation in a calculation format, then that is what it will look like. But you will get the same answer, 696,300, and if you're doing your table, there's my 696,300. Okay, let us summarize. In terms of periodic inventory, we know for one, the emphasis on the purchases account. Record all the components that you need to calculate cost of sales. Opening stock, net purchases. What is net purchases? purchases, less returns, less donations, less drawings, right? Add expenses on purchases, like what? Carriage on purchases, import duties, customs duties, all of them. Do not include carriage on sales. We've alluded to this before, just a reminder. That will give you merchandise available for resale, less your closing stock will give you your cost of sales. Eventually, you take your sales minus your cost of sales, and that will give you your gross profit. From me, Ashraf Patel, and the team, guys, keep on practicing your accounting because we want you to ace your exam, right? Remember what we always say? Keep your feet on the ground. You will definitely reach and become an accounting shining star. Until the next time, be good. Goodbye.